The Chicago wind cut through Keisha Parker's thin jacket like a blade. She stood outside Sterling Trust Bank on that freezing Tuesday morning, her 12-year-old hands trembling, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Fear, hope, a desperate prayer that maybe, just maybe, this worn piece of plastic in her pocket meant something. The card was white once. Now it was yellowed and scratched, the numbers barely visible. For 3 years, Keisha had carried it everywhere, through foster homes that didn't want her, through nights sleeping in bus shelters when the placements fell through days so hungry her stomach stopped hurting and just felt empty. Her mama had pressed it into her palm in that hospital room, her voice weak but urgent. "Keep this safe, baby. When the time comes, you'll know what to do." Keisha hadn't understood then. She was only 9, watching her mama fade away because they couldn't afford the medicine she needed. The doctors said there were programs, assistance, ways to help, but the paperwork took too long and her mama's time ran out. Now Keisha was alone, surviving on the streets of a city that didn't see children like her unless they were causing trouble. She pushed through the heavy glass doors and warmth hit her face. The bank lobby stretched before her like a palace, marble floors gleaming, tall columns reaching toward painted ceilings, people in expensive suits moving with the kind of confidence that came from never wondering where your next meal would come from. Keisha felt every eye turn toward her. A woman in pearls wrinkled her nose and stepped back. A security guard's hand moved toward his radio. She kept walking, one foot in front of the other, the way her mama taught her. At the customer service desk sat a young woman with warm brown eyes and her hair pulled back neatly. Her name tag read Jessica. When Keisha approached, Jessica's expression softened immediately, not with pity, but with genuine kindness. "Hello, sweetheart," Jessica said gently. "How can I help you today?" Keisha's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "I need to check something on this card." She slid the faded plastic across the counter with trembling fingers. Jessica picked it up carefully, turning it over. The card was clearly old, but when she saw the Sterling Trust logo, her eyebrows raised slightly. This was one of theirs, old but real. "Okay, honey," Jessica said warmly. "Let me see what I can find out. What's your name?" Keisha Rose Parker." "All right, Keisha, give me just a moment." As Jessica typed, Keisha's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Around her, the bank hummed with activity, phones ringing, conversations about investments and portfolios, people living lives she couldn't imagine. None of them noticed the little girl at the counter, waiting to see if her mama had left her anything at all, or if this card was just another broken promise in a life full of them. Part 2. The man who saw nothing. Jessica frowned at her computer screen, then picked up her phone. "Mr. Wellington. Yes, I have an unusual situation at the front desk. There's an old account that needs verification." She paused, listening. "Yes, sir, I think you should come take a look." Keisha's stomach dropped. Was something wrong? Was she in trouble? Had she made a mistake coming here? Within minutes, a man appeared from the private offices at the back of the bank. He was tall, probably in his 50s, with silver hair swept back perfectly, and a suit that probably cost more money than Keisha had seen in her entire life. His shoes reflected the ceiling lights, and a gold watch glinted on his wrist. His face wore the expression of someone very important and very busy, someone who didn't appreciate being interrupted. This was Richard Wellington, the bank's senior vice president. He handled accounts worth millions, advised celebrities and politicians, and had his photograph on the wall in the executive hallway. Right now, he was walking toward Keisha with an expression that clearly said he thought this was a complete waste of his valuable time. "Jessica," he said curtly, not even glancing at Keisha. "What seems to be the problem?" "Sir, this young lady has a card registered in our system, but it's flagged as a legacy account. I don't have clearance to access the details." Richard finally looked at Keisha. His eyes traveled from her tangled hair down to her worn shoes with holes in the soles, then back up again. His lip curled slightly, just a tiny movement, but Keisha saw it. She'd seen that look before, on the faces of people who thought she was worthless, who thought she didn't matter, who looked right through her like she was invisible. "I see," Richard said slowly, his voice dripping with suspicion. "And where did you get this card, young lady?" The way he said young lady didn't sound respectful. It sounded like an accusation. "My mama gave it to me," Keisha said, forcing herself to look him in the eye. "Before she died." Richard held out his hand and Keisha reluctantly placed the card in his palm. He examined it like it might be contaminated. "This card is quite old. Are you certain it's legitimate?" "My mama wouldn't lie," Keisha said, and her voice cracked on the word mama. Richard sighed, the kind of sigh that said he had better things to do. "Very well, come with me. We'll use the executive terminal to verify this." He glanced at Jessica. "You can return to your other customers." But Jessica stood up. "Sir, if it's all right, I'd like to accompany Keisha. She seems nervous." Richard looked annoyed but nodded curtly. "Fine, follow me, both of you." They walked through the bank lobby, past rows of tellers and waiting areas with leather chairs. People watched them pass, this odd trio. The important executive, the kind employee, and the homeless girl who clearly didn't belong. Keisha heard the whispers following them like shadows. "Is that child lost? Why is Mr. Wellington dealing with her personally? Someone should call child services. She probably stole that card." Each whisper felt like a knife, but Keisha kept her head up. She kept being brave, just like her mama taught her. Even when the world looked at you like you were nothing, you had to remember you were somebody. You mattered. Your mama said so. Part 3. The screen that changed everything. Richard's office was enormous. Wood-paneled walls, thick carpet that swallowed Keisha's footsteps, windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Behind his massive polished desk hung diplomas, awards, and photographs of Richard shaking hands with important-looking people. Everything in this room screamed power, success, the kind of life Keisha had only seen on television. He gestured impatiently for her to sit in one of the chairs across from his desk. Jessica stood beside her, one hand resting gently on Keisha's shoulder, a small comfort that meant everything. Richard inserted the card into a special reader attached to his computer, then began typing. His fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced ease, his face cold and professional. Keisha watched him, trying to read his expression, trying to prepare herself for disappointment. Maybe the account was empty. Maybe there was nothing there. Maybe her mama's last gift was just hope wrapped in plastic, and hope didn't pay for food or shelter. Then something changed. Richard's typing slowed. He leaned forward, squinting at the screen. His eyebrows drew together in confusion. He clicked something with his mouse, then leaned back, staring. His mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again. "That can't be right," he muttered. He typed something else, clicked, waited, stared. The color was slowly draining from his face, turning him pale despite his expensive tan. Jessica leaned forward, concerned. "Sir, is everything all right?" Richard didn't answer. He was completely focused on the screen, his eyes moving back and forth rapidly, like he was reading something over and over, trying to make sense of it. His hands, which had been so steady and confident moments ago, were beginning to shake. Keisha felt her heart racing. Something was happening, something big. The air in the room felt electric, charged with a tension she didn't understand. Finally, Richard looked up at Keisha, and his expression had completely transformed. The condescension was gone. The impatience was gone. The judgment was gone. In their place was something Keisha had never expected to see on the face of someone like him. Shock, complete and total shock. "What's your full name?" he asked, and his voice sounded strange, almost breathless. "Keisha Rose Parker." "And your mother's name?" "Diana." "Diana Ann Parker." Richard's hands were actually trembling as he picked up his phone. "Margaret, I need you in my office immediately, and bring David from legal, now." He hung up without waiting for a response. Jessica's hand tightened on Keisha's shoulder. "Mr. Wellington, what's going on? You're scaring her." Richard ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for probably the first time all day. He stared at Keisha like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her, not just looking through her. "Keisha," he said slowly, carefully, like he was afraid his words might shatter something fragile. "Do you know a man named Thomas Brennan?" Keisha thought hard, searching her memory. The name sounded familiar, like something from a dream she'd almost forgotten. I think my mama mentioned that name a long time ago. She used to clean houses, and I think Mr. Brennan was one of her clients." "He was more than a client," Richard said quietly, and there was something in his voice now, respect maybe, or wonder. "Your mother worked for Thomas Brennan for 7 years. She took care of him after his wife died. She helped him when he was sick. According to these records, she became like family to him." Part 4. The truth nobody expected. Two people entered the office quickly. A sharp-looking woman in a business suit and a man carrying a leather folder. They both looked at Richard with questions in their eyes, then noticed Keisha, and their expressions shifted to confusion. "Margaret David, sit down," Richard said, his voice still unsteady. "You're not going to believe this." They sat, and Richard turned his computer monitor so they could see the screen. Keisha watched as their eyes widened, as Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, as David whispered something that sounded like, "Oh my God." "What?" Keisha asked, her voice breaking. "Please, somebody tell me what's happening. Did I do something wrong? Is my mama in trouble?" Richard turned to face her fully, and when he spoke, his voice was gentler than Keisha ever thought possible from someone like him. "Keisha, you haven't done anything wrong. In fact, you've just—" He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "You've just discovered something incredible." He took a deep breath. Thomas Brennan was a very wealthy man. He made his fortune in real estate, buying and selling properties all over Chicago. He never had children of his own, and after his wife died, he became quite lonely. Your mother didn't just clean his house. She talked with him, kept him company, made him feel human again. She brought you with her sometimes when you were younger. Do you remember? Keisha searched her memory and found a faint image. A big house with a garden, an old man with kind eyes who gave her cookies and called her Little Bright Eyes. Maybe. I was really little. You were 4 or 5, Richard said. Thomas Brennan fell ill about 8 years ago. Your mother cared for him during his final months, and before he died, he did something extraordinary. Richard paused, looking at Keisha with an expression she couldn't quite read. He created a trust fund, a very substantial trust fund, and he named you as the sole beneficiary. The room was completely silent. Keisha could hear her own breathing, rapid and shallow. Her heart pounded in her ears. I don't understand, she whispered. Jessica knelt down beside Keisha's chair, taking her small, dirt-streaked hand in both of hers. Honey, Mr. Brennan left you money. A lot of money. That card your mother gave you, it's connected to an account that's been growing for years, waiting for you. How much? Keisha asked, and the words came out so quietly they were almost just breath. Richard, Margaret, and David exchanged glances. David opened his folder and pulled out a document, quickly scanning it. When he looked up at Keisha, his eyes were damp. Richard took a deep breath. Keisha, the current balance in your trust fund, including all accumulated interest and investment returns, is approximately $47 million. The world stopped spinning. Keisha was sure she'd heard wrong. She must have heard wrong. Those words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Numbers that big weren't real. They were just sounds people made. I'm sorry, she said, shaking her head. I don't. What? 47 million, Margaret repeated softly. Keisha, sweetheart, you're wealthy, very wealthy. You never have to worry about money again. Not for food, not for shelter, not for anything. The tears came then, sudden and overwhelming, pouring down Keisha's face in hot streams. Her whole body began to shake. Jessica wrapped her arms around her and held her tight while Keisha sobbed into her shoulder. Years of fear and hunger and loneliness, and exhaustion finally breaking free like a dam bursting. Part 5. When shame turns to grace, it's okay, Jessica murmured, stroking Keisha's hair the way her mama used to. Let it out, honey. Let it all out. Richard, this powerful man who minutes ago had looked at Keisha with disdain, got up from his desk and poured a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. He brought it to Keisha with hands that were still trembling slightly. "Here," he said gently, "drink this." Keisha took the glass, her hands shaking so badly that water sloshed over the rim. She managed a few sips, the cool liquid soothing her burning throat. "I don't understand," she said again, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Why didn't my mama tell me? Why didn't she use the money? She got sick and we couldn't afford her medicine and she died. If she'd known about this money, she could have." Her voice broke completely. The adults in the room looked at each other with expressions of deep sadness. David, the lawyer, cleared his throat carefully. "Keisha, your mother did know. She knew about the trust, but she also knew the terms. According to Mr. Brennan's instructions, the funds could only be accessed by you, and only under specific conditions, when you turned 18 or in special circumstances requiring judicial review. The trust was designed to protect you, to make sure this money would always be there for your future, no matter what happened. Your mother," Margaret added softly, "kept that card safe all those years. She made sure you had it because she knew that one day you would need it. She protected your future even though," her voice caught, "even though it cost her everything." Fresh tears spilled down Keisha's cheeks. Her mama had known, had carried that secret while she got sicker, while they struggled, while she faded away in that hospital bed. She protected Keisha's future even when she couldn't save herself. "What happens now?" Keisha asked in a small voice. Margaret smiled warmly. "Now we make sure you're taken care of. First, we need to find you a safe place to stay tonight. Then we'll work on finding you a proper guardian, someone who can help you manage all this until you're old enough to do it yourself." "I'll make some calls," David said, already pulling out his phone. "I know some excellent family court judges who can expedite the process." Richard stood and straightened his tie, composing himself. "And I'll personally oversee the management of your assets." He paused, then looked directly at Keisha. "I want to apologize. When you first came in, I made assumptions about you based on your appearance. I judged you unfairly, and I'm deeply sorry. You deserved better from me, from everyone here." Keisha looked up at this powerful man, and she saw something in his eyes that surprised her. Respect and maybe even a little bit of awe. "It's okay," she said quietly. "People look at me like that all the time." "Well, they shouldn't," Richard said firmly. "And from this moment forward, that changes. You are now one of the most significant clients of this bank, and you will be treated with the dignity and respect you deserve." He turned to Margaret. "Let's start immediately. Keisha needs clothes, food, a safe place to rest. Let's make it happen." What followed was a whirlwind. Jessica took Keisha to a private bathroom where she could wash her face and hands with soap that smelled like lavender. Margaret called a boutique and arranged for clothes to be delivered. David made phone calls to social services and lawyers. And Richard personally went to the executive dining room and brought back a tray of food, a warm sandwich, soup, fresh fruit, cookies, and a tall glass of milk. Keisha sat in Richard's office, eating slowly because her stomach had shrunk from too many hungry days, watching as these strangers worked to help her. Part 6. The girl who became visible. The clothes arrived in beautiful bags with ribbon handles, soft things, warm things, things that fit properly. Margaret helped Keisha pick out a sweater the color of autumn leaves, clean jeans, new socks, and a winter coat that would actually keep her warm. There were even new shoes, sneakers without holes, her exact size. Keisha changed in the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the clean, properly dressed girl staring back. She looked normal, like a regular kid, like someone who mattered. When she came back to Richard's office, everyone smiled. "You look beautiful," Jessica said, and there were tears in her eyes. A social worker arrived, a kind woman named Patricia who explained that she would help find Keisha a safe foster placement. But given the unusual circumstances, the process would be handled with special care. "We're going to protect you," David promised. "This is your money for your future, no one else's. We'll make sure you're placed with someone trustworthy, someone who will care about you, not your money." As the afternoon turned to evening and the bank began to close, Richard made a final call. He arranged for Keisha to stay in a hotel suite for the night, with Jessica volunteering to stay with her until a more permanent situation could be arranged. A car was called, a nice car with heated seats and a driver who smiled at Keisha kindly. Before she left, Keisha stood in the bank lobby one more time, looking around at the marble and the columns and the painted ceiling. This morning, this place had felt cold and unwelcoming. Now it felt different. Now it felt like the place where her life had changed forever. Richard walked her to the door, and before she left, he knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Keisha," he said, "you're going to have opportunities now that most people never get. You can go to any school you want. You can live anywhere you choose. You can become anything you dream of." He paused. "But money doesn't make you who you are. Your mother raised you to be kind and brave, and those qualities are worth more than any amount of money. Hold on to that, okay?" Keisha nodded, feeling tears threaten again. "And one more thing," Richard added. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me why I got into this business in the first place, not to get rich but to help people. You reminded me of that today. So thank you." The hotel room was like something from a dream. A huge bed with soft white sheets, a bathroom with marble counters and fluffy towels, windows overlooking the glittering Chicago skyline. Jessica ordered room service, and they ate dinner together while watching cartoons on the biggest television Keisha had ever seen. Later, after a long hot shower and wearing new pajamas Margaret had included, Keisha sat on the bed and held the faded white card in her hands. This little piece of plastic she'd carried for so long, never knowing it was the key to everything. "Can I tell you something?" Keisha asked Jessica, who was sitting in an armchair nearby. "Of course, honey. I used to be so angry at my mama." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "For leaving me, for dying, for not fighting harder to stay alive." Her voice broke. "But now I understand. She was fighting. She was protecting this for me. She could have tried to break the trust, could have spent years in court trying to get the money early, but she didn't. She protected my future even though it cost her everything." Jessica came to sit on the bed, pulling Keisha into a gentle hug. "Your mama loved you more than anything in this world, and Mr. Brennan did too in his way. They're both watching over you now and they're so proud of you." "I miss her," Keisha whispered. "I know, sweetheart, I know." Part 7. Building something beautiful that night. For the first time in years, Keisha fell asleep in a warm bed with a full stomach, not worried about where she would go tomorrow or how she would survive. She fell asleep knowing she was safe, knowing she had a future, knowing that somehow, despite all the darkness, the light had found her. The next morning brought more good news. David had found someone perfect to be Keisha's guardian. A retired teacher named Helen Washington, who had been a foster parent for 20 years. She was kind, patient, and independently comfortable, with no financial motivations. When Keisha met her that afternoon, Helen's warm smile and gentle manner reminded her just a little bit of her mama. Helen's house was cozy, filled with books and photographs and the smell of something baking. She had a garden where flowers would grow in the spring, and a room already prepared for Keisha, painted soft blue, with a comfortable bed and a desk by the window. "This is your home now," Helen said simply, "for as long as you need it." Over the following weeks and months, Keisha's new life took shape. David set up educational trusts and investment accounts. Margaret created structures that would provide for Keisha's needs while protecting the bulk of her inheritance for her future. Richard checked in regularly, and he and Keisha developed an unexpected friendship. He told her about his own childhood, about being poor and working his way up, about losing sight of what mattered along the way. "You reminded me," he said, "of why any of it is worthwhile." Jessica became a regular visitor, taking Keisha out for ice cream or to museums or simply for walks in the park. The bond they'd formed that first day never faded. Years later, when Keisha graduated from college, Jessica was there in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. But perhaps the most important thing that happened was this. Keisha decided what to do with her fortune. She could have spent it all on herself, lived in luxury, never thought about others. But that wasn't who her mama raised her to be. When she turned 18, she created the Diana Parker Foundation, named after her mother. The foundation provided assistance to homeless children and families, helping them with food, shelter, medical care, and education. She funded scholarships for kids who came from nothing, just like she had. She supported programs that helped people like her mama, single parents working multiple jobs, trying to keep their children fed and safe. The foundation opened centers in Chicago, then expanded to other cities. Each center had warm beds, hot meals, counselors, tutors, and most importantly, dignity. No one was turned away. No one was judged. Every person who walked through those doors was treated like they mattered because they did. Part 8. The light that never fades. Years passed. Keisha grew into a woman her mama would have been proud of, educated, compassionate, strong. She attended Northwestern University, studying social work and nonprofit management. She learned about systemic poverty, about policy, about how to create real change. And she used every tool at her disposal, her education, her resources, her voice, to help people who had once been invisible just like she was. The Diana Parker Foundation became one of the most respected charitable organizations in the country. But Keisha never let it become just another corporation. She remembered what it felt like to walk into that bank, dirty and scared, and sure that no one cared. She made sure every person her foundation served felt seen, felt heard, felt valued. Richard Wellington eventually retired from Sterling Trust Bank, but before he did, he established a program that trained bank employees to treat every customer with dignity, regardless of their appearance. He called it the Keisha Initiative, though Keisha had insisted it wasn't necessary. "It is necessary," Richard told her, "because I never want another person to walk into that bank and be treated the way I treated you. You changed me, Keisha. You changed how I see the world." Jessica left the bank too, eventually. She came to work for the Diana Parker Foundation, running their youth programs. She said it was the best decision she ever made, trading financial statements for the chance to see kids' faces light up when they realized someone cared about them. Helen remained Keisha's guardian until she turned 18, and her friend for life after that. They celebrated every birthday, every achievement, every milestone together. When Helen grew older and needed care herself, Keisha was there, just as Helen had been there for her. Every year on the anniversary of that cold Tuesday morning, Keisha visited her mama's grave. The headstone was simple but beautiful, made of smooth gray stone with flowers carved around the edges. Keisha would sit beside it and tell her mama about all the people they had helped, all the lives they had changed. "We did it, Mama," she would say, her voice soft but strong. "We took the gift Mr. Brennan gave us and we made it mean something. We made it matter." Because that's what Keisha learned in the end. Money could change your circumstances, but it couldn't change who you were. It couldn't buy love or kindness or courage. Those things came from inside, from the values her mother had instilled in her during those hard years when they had nothing but each other. Keisha Parker went from a homeless child with holes in her shoes to one of Chicago's most beloved philanthropists. But she never forgot where she came from. She never forgot what it felt like to be hungry, to be cold, to be invisible. And she spent the rest of her life making sure that other people, people the world might overlook or dismiss, knew that they mattered, that they were seen, that they were loved. The little white card that started it all, that faded piece of plastic that held so much hope, Keisha kept it in a frame on her desk. Not hidden away in a drawer, but on display where she could see it every single day. A reminder of her mother's love. A reminder of Mr. Brennan's kindness. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, there might be light waiting if only we're brave enough to keep going. And sometimes, just sometimes, miracles do happen, even to people who think they're all alone in the world. Because somewhere out there, someone needs their miracle. And maybe, just maybe, you're the one meant to help them find it. The end.